Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, Drunk HOA President Broke into My Home and Stole My Credit Cards. I Transformed the Entire HOA. I had lived in my home in my nice, quiet, gated community for many years and never had an issue. The HOA was always a little picky about silly stuff, but for the most part, their rules and regulations made sense to me. That is, until this jackass of a guy moved in next door to me. You know, it was a real heartbreak to lose my original neighbor because he turned out to be a great friend to me, and the man who moved in is a real jerk. To make things frickin' worse, he went and joined the HOA as well. How was this man a jerk? Well, let me tell you. First of all, I'm just a genuinely good neighbor, okay? I'm always respectful to people around me. I don't throw parties or have loud music or ridiculous decorations. The HOAs never had to send me a single warning letter. Oh, and I have also a fabulous landscaping. Damn it. Anyway, this new neighbor of mine was immediately off-putting and curt, to say the least. He did not appreciate something about my apparel or maybe my car that I had in the driveway at the moment while I was working on my motorcycle in the garage. My introduction was normal and he did at least shake my hand, but he wiped it on his pants when he saw that I was doing work on the motorcycle. However, my hands were not even greasy. He clearly was not listening to me much as I tried to make some small talk about his arrival to the area. I see your car is parked in the driveway. You know, you're not allowed to keep it outside overnight. HOA rules. His bald head was shining in the bright summer sun, hurting my eyes. Yes, I know. It's only outside for a few hours, so I have more room in the garage. He walked past and craned his head to peer into my garage, leaving behind a faint whiff of alcohol. I'm not normally one to judge, especially when it comes to drinking, but it was only around noon. My neighbor made an annoyed noise and gave me a dirty look. Oh, so it's you who is starting that thing up before curfew allows noise like that? Really? At 5 AM? The judgment from him was starting to really annoy me, plus he is wrong. I was not doing anything like that. I've only gotten the bike out 3 times since summer started, and it was always in the middle of the day. You must have me confused. I have not taken... I don't think so. Just know that if I hear your bike before 7 AM again, I'm going to have the HOA send you a fine. Consider this your first warning. He turned on his heel and marched back towards his house. I was pretty pissed and not even in the mood to finish my motorcycle tune-up and went inside. For the next few months I could not help but feel like this man was watching me constantly. I honestly just thought that he was jealous or something, but this was before the day that he decided to break into my house. I was outside washing my car, which is a pretty damn nice Mercedes, and I noticed him repeatedly going to his curtains and looking at me. I'm not sure if he just has a crush on me at this point or what. My wife and daughter were both home and in the backyard hanging out in the pool. I had the garage door up and had been doing some work on the motorcycle again. It is a hobby. While I was working on the bike, I managed to very clumsily spill some oil on my pants. My wife is a big clean freak and I took out my wallet and set it on a toolbox, removed the pants in the back of the garage and took them inside to the washing area. I was probably in the house for a total of 5 minutes and went back out into the garage to continue what I was doing. A few hours passed and I started hearing my phone getting several notifications. They were from my bank. Apparently someone had taken my card to an ATM and tried to withdraw the maximum amount of money, sending an alert to my phone asking to change my withdrawal permissions. Clearly, I'm like, what the hell? How is this possible? I looked over at my wallet, which was sitting on my toolbox, and saw that sure as hell my credit and debit cards were missing. I start to panic. I immediately called my bank and informed them that I'm not the one trying to make these withdrawals and that they need to cancel the card. The bank was also able to see that the attempted withdrawals were made from the nearest bank to my neighborhood. As I am standing in my driveway talking on the phone, I noticed that my neighbor pulled up and a suspiciously perfect amount of time to potentially go to the nearest bank, make a withdrawal, and then come back home. The bank cancelled the card, but whoever it was managed to still take over $2,000 from my account before it was caught. Now, I know that I cannot accuse my neighbor just based on convenient timing, but then we had the video evidence. Apparently, my neighbor, who was also seen swerving on the camera from the intersection that the bank is located at, was caught at the ATM using my debit card to withdraw money from my account. Then he was seen going to the gas station across the street and filling up his gas tank using my credit card. A few hours later, the police were knocking on his door. He answered after a painful minute of them shouting and banging loudly. Several neighbors had come out to watch at this point as well. It did not take long for him to drunkenly admit to it and attempted to just give the cards back and say he would return the money. Needless to say, the cops had different plans, he did not fight them and went quietly. I received the cards and eventually the money back, but it took a while. Somehow he managed to be out and back home within the week. He must have had a good lawyer. Every time I think about it, my heart races and I am filled with rage. My wife and daughter were home. What if he had done something to harm them? Thankfully he didn't, but this could have been worse. I realized that he is on the HOA board and I started thinking to myself, maybe I can find a way to shame this a-hole even further. I attended the next meeting, which was about a week after everything happened, and gave my story with police documents to back it up. I also realized upon attending this meeting that he was not only on the board but had somehow worked his way up to the president's seat. He of course started lying, even though there were several neighbors at the meeting that had witnessed him being arrested. I told the board that he was not fit to be president and a murmur of agreement rippled throughout the room. I had considered not mentioning it, but I couldn't help myself. "I bet he has alcohol in the cup right now," I said, and the lady next to him grabbed the metal container and sniffed it. She said that it smelled like vodka and everyone glared at him. Even though revenge is sweet, I could not help but to feel a twinge of sadness for the guy as he left the meeting room with his tail between his legs. No one even had to say anything, it was just a given that he was clearly voted off the board, no longer welcome back. That same meeting, I became the next board member. Not only was I going to ensure that our neighborhood had fair rules, but also decent presidents and not drunken thieves. And yeah, ripe stars, if you still enjoy the crazy neighbors from hell and HOA stories, then please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and also like the video if you enjoy the content. Thank you so much in advance, your help is very much appreciated. The next one is titled The Most Hated Landlord. I was not the tenant in this story, but it was a former roommate of mine and I had a front row seat to the events. So my friend, let's call him Paul, returned to my city after living out of state for a year or so. He needed a place to stay while he got himself set up with a job and a new apartment. I had a spare bedroom, so I offered it to him for a cheap price. That way he could be month to month and just move out when he was ready. He probably stayed with me about 6 months, found a new job, saved up some cash and signed a lease on a new apartment. Everything seemed fine. Paul liked his new studio apartment in a large apartment building. It was not far from work, near transportation and in an area where he had other friends. Great, he got all moved in and seemed to be set. Until he realized the apartment had bedbugs. He was not there a week before he started finding bedbugs, and bedbug bites of course. So he did what anyone would do, he contacted the landlord's office to report the problem and ask about solutions. The office claimed they had no other reports of bedbugs, they had no idea what he was talking about. Maybe he already had bedbugs when he moved in. You get the idea. Well, Paul knew they were lying, so he started talking to the neighbors on his corridor. And of course, he found others were also dealing with bedbugs and that the landlord had given them the same BS response. So Paul decided to do a bit of research to see what options the tenants had. It turns out they could easily report the problem to the city inspectors, and the more reports they got from the same address, the more likely they were to prioritize sending someone to inspect the building. Paul Paul put together the info for reporting with suggestions for what to mention and asked his neighbors to make reports. Some of them must have followed through because it was not long before Paul was contacted about the issue. He had backed up all of his stuff and returned to my house, but still had the lease and keys for the place. He met the inspector at the building and showed her his apartment. It was clearly infested and there were signs in the hallway. The inspector turned out to be a young woman who was very dedicated to her job. She told the landlord it was their responsibility to cure the infestation. The landlord wanted to bring in his usual exterminator to treat the apartment and hallway. They tried that, but it did not fix the issue. The inspector eventually insisted that they tear out the carpet and sections of flooring where the infestation seemed to be centered. By now the inspector had seen that multiple units were affected, so the costs were mounting. She also discovered that the building had not had a proper inspection in years. The landlord was dodging her and did not want to set up a time for her to do a full inspection, of course. Well, after he negotiated to get out of his lease, Paul gave the inspector the punch code to the front door and pointed out several things he thought the landlord was hiding, including bedbugs on other floors, malfunctioning elevator, old fire extinguishers, illegal basement level units, improperly stored building supplies, tripping hazard floor in the laundry room, damaged walls and corridors, etc. The inspector called Paul and let him know she had returned to the building on a couple of occasions. Once she was meeting the building manager, she let herself in a little early and walked up on the manager, trash-talking her and saying how he did not want to be bothered. The family-owned firm that owned that building had several large apartment buildings in the area and the inspector intended to visit them all. She had already found tens of thousands in repairs for Paul's building that she was insisting the owner make ASAP. Given how they were operating, I am sure all of their buildings were in a similar state. They made an expensive mistake when they tried to ignore Paul. And Ripe Stars, if you yourself have ever dealt with a landlord from hell before, then please feel free to share your story either in the comments or on r/ripestories on Reddit, where there is a good chance that I will read your story in a video. And by the way, alternatively, if you're on a PC, you can go to my About page on YouTube and you will find my business mail, and you can also send your story there if you want, if that's easier for you. And the next one is titled Insanely Entitled People. Many years ago, I worked in a group home. For the privacy of all the residents, we had a set visitation room with visitation hours by appointment only. Appointment only so that two families were not trying to visit at the same time. It had a separate entrance and a door that shut it off from the rest of the house. It had half a bath, a TV, cable hookup, game console, maybe 50 games, DVD player and about 150 movies, board and card games along with nice comfy seating and a small 4-person table. Visitors were not allowed anywhere but that room if any of the other residents were home. It did not matter if Bill wanted to show off his new bedding set or if Jack's mom wanted to see if he needed new clothes. If the other residents were home, no. The families of 5 of the residents were fine with it. Kyle's mother and grandmother were not. They firmly believed they were within their rights to enter the rest of the house and inspect it and his housemates. He was their baby and they had rights by God. But actually no, the residents of this home were 30 to 40-year-old men with developmental and physical disabilities. They were all actually wards of the state. And by the way guys, I'm not exactly sure what that means. If you got an idea, please let me know in the comments. Anyway, the fact that they were even allowed to know where he was, let alone visit, was a huge privilege. Our agency had many other homes where the families of the residents had no idea where they were and were not allowed to see them. The families were only allowed to contact the case manager and inquire about them. Back to Kyle's mom and grandma, it was a constant battle to keep them out of the rest of the house. It got to the point that we had to have an extra staff member during their visits. They had to sit outside the connection door while the visits were going on and physically stand blocking their way when they would attempt to enter. I lost track of how many times we ended up calling the police to have them removed from the main part of the house before that happened. That is when they started calling the police on us. After the 3rd time of them calling the police to demand entrance to the rest of the house, they lost their privilege of visiting. Kyle was moved to another home where they were not allowed to know the address. This did not go over well, to put it nicely. They were adamant that Kyle was still in our home, and they threatened us several times that we would pay for keeping their baby from them. A restraining order was granted against them, keeping them 800 feet from the house, staff, residents, and no calls to the house. It all came to a head one night when, at dark 30, I was locking up the house for the night. All doors and windows had to be checked and the alarms set. Another staff was doing bedtime medicine, the other two were helping out with bedtime routines and getting laundry going. I kept telling the other staff I smelled smoke like a campfire, just faint whiffs of it. They said I was crazy. I had just walked the entire house and nothing was burning. It must be a neighbor having a small backyard fire or something, and I got a whiff while closing the windows and it was stuck in my nose. It finally was strong enough for the others to smell. In pairs we checked the house again. Nothing, but the smell is getting stronger. We met back in the living room and decided to go ahead and call the fire department. When we realized we could see wisps of smoke in the living room, we woke the residents and had them put on shoes and jackets. The smoke in the living room was now clearly visible and starting to make its way towards the bedrooms, and it triggered the alarms. Finally. The protocol was to evacuate and get the residents to the van. The living room was the exact center of the house with an open floor plan with the kitchen one side and a laundry room on the other. The bedrooms were through the living room and to the left and right, along with the two bathrooms, the visitors' room and our office being at opposite ends of each other. Down the hall, we shuffled to our office because the van was parked to that side and the keys in the office. As we came around the corner of the house, we see the source of the smoke. Our front porch was on fire. The house was brick, which is what was preventing it from spreading outwards, but it was spreading upwards towards the roof. The police and fire departments arrived just as we reached the van. Fire department went to work on the house, police head towards us. We are all fine except 4 people came running up to us. Kyle's mother and grandmother along with 2 unknown men. The 2 women started screaming for Kyle and they were here to rescue him. We had endangered him by allowing him to live in a fire trap. They suddenly realized there was no Kyle in the group and were now screaming that we had left him to burn in that house. They were suing us, they would shut us down and have us in prison for murder. The police quickly asked if we had left someone behind, to which we answered no, we have all 6 men, but for their safety we had to get them in the van and then we would sort this out. The police held mother and grandmother back from us while they continued to shriek about Kyle and we had left him to die. 2 of the staff loaded them while me and my coworker talked to the police, starting with the fact those 2 women had a restraining order and for his safety and ours, Kyle had been moved to a location unknown to them. They were cuffed immediately and told to pipe down. We proceeded to explain what had transpired that evening. The fire was doused quickly while we did this. One of the firemen came over to talk to the officers and we heard him say there was preliminary evidence this fire was set deliberately. There would be a formal investigation. Kyle's mother and grandmother were arrested for violating the restraining order and suspicion of arson. The 2 men were arrested on suspicion of arson also. Results of the investigation determined clear case of arson. There was also a deliberate rigging of a device to the door leading out of the visitation room that would have been fatal to the person opening the door and if anyone was close by, debilitating if not fatal. The 4 were indicted on vandalism, arson, 8 counts of attempted homicide, 2 counts attempted murder. It came out they were unaware of the other side door, which saved lives. They got a plea deal and got 7 to 10 years each. This was back in the early 2000s, so I don't remember what exactly the sentence was. And guys, guess who just woke up right when I finished the recording? That was of course the little cuddle monster house cat. Right, Disney? Who's the cuddle monster? Disney's the cuddle monster. Maybe Disney wanna come out? Or Disney wanna stay inside? Oh, look at who's hiding here. Disney. Imagine having a life like this. Sleeping all day wherever you want, preferably in a drawer, not having to do anything. come on? For the YouTube audience? I think someone wants to stay in here. She really likes being in here, right? Disney? Disney. Disney, Disney, Disney. Wondering if she finds some insects or something in there. I hope not. But anyway, guys, you want to come out for the YouTube audience? Seems like she doesn't want to come out. Oh, but by the way, if you don't usually check my YouTube story, I think you can see it if you click on my profile picture, and I guess on mobile maybe it's automatically suggested to you. Sometimes I upload like additional pictures or videos of Disney, and today I actually upload a video of the neighbor's hedgehog, which is also super cute. The hedgehog's name is Dumpling, because for some reason the hedgehog doesn't have any ears. And yeah, it looks like a dumpling. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and Disney and me see you again tomorrow. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.